Hello and welcome back 2D folks. In today's video we're going to tackle the assignment of our first assignment in class, line. So we've already kind of discussed this in class some, but I'm just going to talk a little bit about the sketching process and talk about the overall drawing process when we get to our more finished or realized versions from our sketches that we took on our derive. So to begin with, we're going to go on a derive. Essentially, that's just a French word for trying to walk through your city spaces or community spaces and record the psychogeography of a space. Psychogeography is essentially just fusing what is organically found in the landscape and the architecture and trying to get a mood or general feeling from that landscape or place. So this is really important for us as artists and developing artists, especially for 2D, because it makes us more aware of our surroundings. And the big part of this assignment is to not only learn how to work with line, but rather to be able to create a composition that matches a mood. So that's going to be the real importance of this assignment. Trying to pin down marks and lines in a composition that can directly correlate to translating a feeling or a mood. So hence why that derive is such an important process for us, is because it's going to give us a breadth of kind of images to be able to decipher through or go through and have us kind of be able to respond to an environment, understand the kind of psychogeography, and be able to take those marks, those lines, pull them into a composition, and have them equal a feeling or an emotion. So this is kind of a harder assignment in a lot of ways because you have to directly correlate your marks to words or feelings. So let's just talk about that process real quick. So going out on your derive, this could last anywhere from like an hour to a couple of hours. So I just went around my local kind of neighborhood. I've got a lot of things going on there. We've got like a community garden. We've got some like farmhouses. We've got some built up kind of apartment complexes that are happening a little down the ways, as well as some larger kind of farm fields on the other side. So I was able to get a pretty good pass through, and I was able to pick up on a lot of different things in terms of just interesting visual correlations that were really stark in terms of their contrast of meaning, but also just physically how they looked. There was a lot of contrast. And my mood really changed, and I was being really specific and recording my thoughts and really investigating the feelings as I was generating these marks and generating these compositions, and really focusing on what I was naturally attracted to in these spaces. So I was trying to be really specific with that and be really attentive to what my emotions were, what I was feeling from that location, as well as generate marks that can cultivate a meaning. Right? And so when I say meaning, right, you want to have that associated adjective or associated word of expression, right? Happy, sad, well, all that kind of good stuff. You can go into more specific adjectives from there too. Okay, so I've got some basic stuff here. You are supposed to come up with at least 24 images and turn in 24 matching words to those images for this assignment. Your sketches could look something like this, where they're a little bit more organic with rather some kind of free-form kind of compositions that you record, or they're all just boxes. So either one is totally fine for me. Just make sure you have 24 distinct sketches happening. Okay, so let's talk about this drawing process. So if you've never worked with abstraction before, or if you're scared to get into it, I understand that it could be a little bit overwhelming. So we're just going to start off with talking about what abstraction is. And abstraction, lucky enough for you, is a pretty broad term. I think a couple of ways that you can mark it down or pin it down, and this might be kind of a crude definition, but it could help you to begin with it or enter into it, is just it's a minimal kind of approach to something, right? So it's either looking at the basic lines, shapes, forms, and values of an object, person, place, or thing, and just simplifying that information down, right? So that could be a very kind of simple working definition for abstraction for this class. You could do a lot with that. You can really stretch the boundaries here and really have some fun. So I want you to sketch and start that process of sketching and recording these spaces, and then try to abstract them some. So let's take this example. So this is an ice cream cone. My neighbor has an ice cream truck. I know that sounds creepy. bit creepy, and it is kind of creepy, I guess. But he's got an ice cream truck, and he's a totally nice dude though. But he's got this like really kind of iconic looking ice cream cone, and it's like super joyful. It takes me back to my childhood. And I ended up sketching it on my walk, and I ended up turning it into this kind of drawing over here. Now what you can see is I actually just duplicated these forms of the ice cream mounds, right? So I just kind of stacked them one on top of the other and kind of put them on these like bountiful little ice cream clouds, if you will. So that's kind of one way that you can kind of interpret that information. And remember, this is all about your interpretation, and that's where the fun part of this assignment really comes in. This is a literal kind of interpretation of your journey through a space. So you get to have fun, you get to be the editor, and you get to control the kind of images and the content that can be derived from these images. This is going to be a recording of your space in that time and particular place. So have fun with it, and try to really hone down on lines and marks that are going to cultivate a meaning or a feeling. Okay, so that's what really we're trying to get to. So I also kind of found there was some kind of naturally abstracted things too when you start to either crop them or you start to zoom in. So for cropping, this is actually just a slice of asphalt with like the tar lines. I'm not totally sure what you would call that, but hopefully you understand what I'm saying there. This is just right outside my neighborhood. It's this asphalt area, and it's got all of these beautiful like kind of tar lines, and I just essentially cropped an area just by like doing this, right, with a basic kind of viewfinder of using my fingers, and just kind of recorded the lines as they were passing through in that imaginary square that I made. So I actually thought this is a really interesting composition, and this might actually end up turning out to be one of more successful compositions, and I might actually end up turning this into my larger 8x8 drawing. This is a kind of good example of maybe thinking about zooming in to a zone. So this is actually tree bark, and I think this one actually turned out pretty well and pretty interesting. I'll kind of put it up here closer to the camera so you can see it. I was able to cultivate a lot of interesting marks here just by zooming in and getting that kind of micro look at the tree bark, and I was able to really get some interesting values, interesting lines and textures from that tree bark, and that could be a really interesting kind of process too. For areas where I minimized things, this was an area of broken fence posts. So I just ended up recording the hash marks of the fence posts as they were kind of jutting out of the lawn. And there was a bunch of these, and I actually got really super obsessed with these and the clouds. So I did a lot of drawings actually between the clouds. I ended up kind of doing some extra things here on the side too, where I just had some larger pieces of paper and I just kind of had fun. This was some balls sitting on a lawn that I just kind of stacked together, and then I just kind of had a looser fiber brush or a pen with me, and I just kind of started dabbing to simulate the grass. This is also something too, this is another version of my ice cream cone, and there's just some kind of fun, kind of crazy haptic marks around it. So these are kind of some interesting kind of ways or approaches that maybe you can handle this space. And I think the best way just to handle it is just to go ahead and dive in and start minimizing that information after you sketch something out. Okay, so I think my area of interest the most, the things that I kept drawing to in the areas that I really liked, the lines that I cultivated the most, were clouds, my piles of junk, my construction site scenes, as well as my fence posts and things that were kind of in formal disarray or disrepair. So those were the kind of scenes that I really liked the most. So that's going to take me into a larger sketching process. So what I'm going to do from here is I'm going to kind of pick my 6 best compositions, and I'm going to start out with some basic sketches. Now this is not my total 8x8 finished drawings. I am just rather kind of expanding them out so I can see what kind of marks I can cultivate, and then from here I'll be able to go into my larger 8x8 Bristol board paper and be able to start drawing my marks out. The reason I am kind of expanding my sketches first is to kind of get used to the sensibility of working with a micron pen or a ink liner like this. So this is what I'm going to have you guys use, either a Sharpie or a micron pen. just to get us understanding about how we can really think about line and also how to think about using this material. So that's a good recommendation, is expanding these sketches into larger kind of sketches to begin with, so that way you can just kind of understand how to cultivate mark. I think I'm going to actually merge two of these sketches. So I'm going to take my cloud and my fence posts. I think that there was some nice duality with the calmness of the clouds and that kind of roughness of the broken fences that kind of make me feel haphazard. And I think that that could be a really good word to describe certain areas when I was walking along my journey as haphazard. So I'm going to combine those two and make some interesting kind of marks here. So first off, let's start and let's think about how I'm going to start drawing. I've got a variety of assorted pens here that I've pulled out, all ranging in sizes. I've got anywhere from 005 all the way up to a 20 mark brush, which is going to be really thick and is actually going to be more of like a thick, fat kind of liner marker that you would kind of almost simulate like a brush stroke. So I'm going to start off actually with a thinner, a 01 here. I'll print it like that. And you can see this is kind of thinner. Oh, that's a 08. I was going to say that looks too thick. Okay, maybe I had it out of order. Oh, hold on. There we go. These are a little out of order. Okay, I'm going to go with the 01. Or maybe I just grabbed something wrong. Okay. And then I'm going to start, that's a 010. Okay. Oh my lord, I did this totally backwards last time I put these together. Okay, well, there we go. We'll have fun. 01, that should look right. So it's going to be a really, really tiny little marker there. So it's going to be really, really small. And I'm going to start generating some of those cloud marks. So if you have, you know, if you're noticing during this walk, maybe you don't like necessarily the way your sketch is turning out, possibly it could also be a good idea to take your phone and take a couple of snapshots with your phone too. So feel free to both go back and forth between your phone and your sketches. You do have to turn in 24 sketches along with 24 associated words that kind of summarized the sketch, but go ahead and take your phone out too if you need to do that. I'm just going to be kind of loose here with how I'm drawing this, and hopefully this translates okay. I think my image is a little bit blown out. Let me adjust the settings real fast. Hold on, just so you can see. Okay, well, all right, we'll try this. Here, I'll put my arm in front of it so maybe there's a shadow and you can see how I'm drawing. Filming in the 21st century. So I'm just kind of simulating clouds just with marks here, and it's not necessarily trying to render the cloud specifically. I'm just going to try to give the illusion of a cloud. Okay, let's do thin and thick marks over here. We'll go to a 3 now. This is going to be a little bit thicker mark, and I'm just going to give us some value by adding some hash marks here. Some areas defining out the cloud structure, if you will. And I'm keeping it all just one direction because that's kind of how I want my project to develop. I'm going to go to an 8 marker now, so you can see already there's kind of some thickness. Hopefully you can see that. There's some thickness to my marker tip. Okay, and then I'm just going to go back in and add some kind of highlighted areas of interest, so we can add some more movement and more of that cloud structure. Okay, good. Add some of those bubbly kind of cloud feelings. The outside, and I'm going to kind of push it all the way up to the top left and drag it even down to my bottom right. I'm going to go back in here and just add a little bit more of that refined. My neighbors are jamming. All right. I think that's looking pretty decent right now. I like some of the marks that I'm cultivating. So I'm going to go ahead and use my larger marker. Let's go up to a 10 now. So I want something kind of thick. Let's go up to a 20. I'll do that. Nope. This would be really good too to have like a organized kind of section of your markers. Okay, there we go, 10. All right, and I'm going to go ahead and add some of those posts in. It might even be nice too to like go in and have certain bits of your posts be really straight lined, meaning that you can kind of even play with your ruler here. And I'm going to go back in and just add some really thick marks. So the reason I'm kind of going back and forth is I want there to be some difference between my line sensibility. And that's going to go back to that idea of cultivating an image that really talks about maybe this indecisiveness, this kind of unfamiliarness with what I was talking about earlier, with my feelings about hesitation, or this kind of going back between this like rule space and this really overdeveloped kind of space. And there was this kind of natural dichotomy that had emerged between them. So I really want to capitalize on that feeling. So now I'm going back in and I'm just adding some hash marks to kind of create some value in between. But this is all line work, and I want you to really think about how line can really construct so much feelings and so much emotions just based off its use and its familiarity. Now I'm using my ruler, and feel free to go in and use different drawing instruments such as a ruler or even a straight form to go in and add different kind of marks to create a different sensibility. Because my ruler line marks are going to create a very different kind of feeling, a much more rigid feeling than the marks that are generated by my hand, right? Which makes total sense. And that's what it's about. It's about sensibility. It's how you have a touch, or you can bring a certain touch or feel to the work to create an emotional response. All right, so very quickly I was able to develop a composition that actually worked pretty well for me. I think I'm going to have to go back in and maybe develop some areas too, and just think about how I want to this drawing to develop. I might go back in and add some more thick marks to this, or thicken up rather the marks that I already have. Till I have something that starts to simulate what I want the feeling to be. This kind of very floating kind of cloud above. This feels very freeform compared to this very angular structure of dilapidated fences below it. I'm going to create some lines here to simulate this kind of breeze, or this upward kind of lift that might simulate wind. And this is turning out to be a very abstracted little piece here, but you can really see how quickly I was able to develop with just a feeling with just kind of simple marks and lines. So I think this is going to be my finished work, and I think I might go on and transform this work now into my larger drawing. I think there might still need to be some areas that might need to be addressed down here. I can add some of these kind of directional lines that are kind of horizontally dissecting my cloud to my bottom of my page, just to create some more kind of horizontal movement to kind of keep the composition flowing in a direction. That might be something that I add to. But this kind of stage of your sketching will really help you kind of problem solve when you go to your larger project here. And like I said, make sure that you're sketching and playing with the material plenty before you go into your larger project, because this is really going to help you achieve a better grade and a more successful composition for your larger assignment. This is all about cultivating marks, and remember, art is, visual arts, I should say. I'll restart it this way. Visual arts are very similar to other types of art forms, literary arts or the dance arts, right? It's about communicating an idea, communicating through language, and the language of art is the elements of art and the principles of design. So we have to use those as our words, right? It's not necessarily like you're reading through a chapter of a book where you're being able to read the adjectives, the verbs, and the noun uses as it's corrugated in a sentence to create content and meaning for the reader, but rather you're organizing line, you're organizing mark, shape, form, color, value, tone, texture, in a semblance of a balanced composition that's going to convey to the viewer an idea or a feeling. And that's what you want to impress upon them with this project. So keep that idea kind of shuffling through your head as you're working through these. Play around with the material, get used to working with the pen and organizing your marks, organizing your lines, and playing with the overall composition. And once again, always think about this frame of the square that you're working in for this assignment. Okay, that's going to stop our video or conclude our video on the sketching process. Please feel free to watch the other videos as they come up. Happy drawing!